Now if you don't like these lines are everywhere there's kind of an edge of a surface. What you can do, you can go to View and you can change Visual Style. Okay, and Visual Style, it's basically how your parts will look on screen. So at the moment we're on shade. What are we on at the moment? We're on shaded with edges. So we've got a bit of shading going on here, and we've also got the edges shown as lines. We could turn those off by going smooth, but you can see it's quite hard to see what geometry you've got on here when you're looking at it this way. Realistic, what this does, it uses more things like materials and lights, but it can really slow down your machine depending on your machine. The main ones I tend to use for general modelling are the shaded with edges that was turned on, shaded with hidden edges. If you want to see objects inside or behind, for maybe you need to see something that's inside, you can turn on hidden edges and it will show you in dashed the things that are hidden behind. But again, it can get a bit noisy. And wireframe, if you really want to see inside something, you can turn on wireframe and that'll give you a good look inside. But it's hard to see what's inside and outside sometimes, especially on a complicated model. And then you've got obviously wireframe with hidden edges. The main things are the hidden edges on and off, wireframe or shaded on and off, black and white. Again, it depends what materials you've got on, whether these will actually do anything. Watercolour, so these you might use in your presentation view when you do a drawing file. If you wanted something to like, you've just sketched it by hand or something like that. These can look quite good actually when you've got different materials and colours in. Yeah, sketch, so that's like a hand sketch. You can pretend you've just drawn it. Also, technical illustration, technical shade. Inventor adds new ones of these every now and then, but because I tend to just stick with these default, it's not something I really use myself, but it probably depends what industry you're in and what you're actually doing with it, and whether you want to pretend you've drawn it by hand to all your friends. Okay, so there we are. I just wanted to show visual styles just so you could understand what these lines were all meaning. We'll go back to our model. So we've got our rounded off edges now, and you can see this could easily be turned down on a lathe from a piece of metal bar. Maybe we didn't want the curve. Okay, so we can go and edit. This is our browser window as we've been using before. So with anything, as with anything else, we can just right click, edit feature. Okay, and we can hold down shift and we can select items that we selected before to delete them, or we can click items again to bring them on. So I'm going to shift click those. So those internal ones we did, I'm not going to fillet them, I'm going to chamfer them. And you might remember from sketching the difference between fillet and chamfer. Fillet tends to be a rounded edge, and chamfer is kind of a straight. Let's do 10 again. So it's kind of a straight line. It just takes off the corner basically. And you could do fillet on an outside edge, just like chamfer. So there. So now we've got rounded edges here and straight lines there. Okay. But I'm looking at this now, and I'm thinking, I don't actually want this to be a solid object. Okay. I'm just going to delete the whole, which we can delete any of these features by right clicking, delete. Now when you delete something, it will say, do you also want to delete the sketch that created that? So in this case it was just our point, so we can delete that, but you need to make sure that sketch isn't used for anything else. If we'd have shared the sketch or used the sketch to create another part, we would also delete that part, okay? So sometimes it's best not to delete the sketch, and then you can always choose to delete it after. Do it as two separate processes. Delete the part, then delete the sketch. But in this case, our part is so simple, we know exactly what it was. It was just that point. So what I want now is I want to hollow this out. I want this to kind of be the outside edge and this to all be hollow. Well, we can just use our shell command. And what shell will do, as with a lot of things in Inventor, it's easy to just show you what it does rather than try and explain it. For thickness, I'm going to go, let's go 5mm. And I'm going to, it's asking for a face, which will be our opening face. So I will click that face there and click OK. And there you go. So what shell does, it actually kind of empties out the interior, it digs out the interior from whichever face you chose. So if I'd have chose this face here, then it would be hollow, but this face would have been solid, if that makes sense. So we've shelled out the interior from this face, and when the 5mm I put in, thickness was the thickness of the wall. So if we'd have put 1, you could see it would have been very, very thin. But 5mm. So now it turns it into like more of a, as it's called, shell of a component. And this now looks, it reminds me of like a CV boot on a car, if anyone knows what that is. Yeah, so you could imagine this being a kind of rubber sleeve over something now. Okay. And that's how you would make that. If ever you did want to make a CV boot or a rubber sleeve, or maybe something that goes on a, like a shaft seal, or maybe a gearbox, something like that, then yeah, this is exactly how you'd do it. So already the part is looking like something you might actually want one day. You would put a hole through there, obviously. So in fact, let's do that. Let's put a hole. Let's put a hole on there. So we'll do a sketch. We'll drop a point on there. And we'll put a hole. And this will actually be more or less, so let's go with 75. Yeah, I want it to be the opening, so this will act as a, like on a drive shaft, a gator, a rubber gator, that kind of thing. Doesn't matter if you don't know what that is, just ignore me, but hopefully you can see the shape we're trying to make, okay? And there we go. So that will be our first part, which is fairly basic, but it's, as I say, it could be used. But we've learnt quite a lot here. We've learnt about extruding a simple sketch, sketching on the face of existing features. So we didn't create a new work plane to create the sketch. We had one sketch here which we extruded. We sketched on the face of that extrusion, the cylinder, and we extruded again. Sketched on the face of the cylinder, extruded again. We learned to do holes, fillets, chamfers. So yeah, we've used the items we're using here, by the way, are the things you will use all the time. Just basic sketching and extruding. You will use, I use it 80% of what I do in Inventor, that's what it is. And then filleting and chamfering all the time. Okay. Most of what I would draw, I would say, was a combination of simple extrusions with fillets and chamfers. Okay. There are lots of other things you can do, and we'll go over those. But for now, if you want to redo this, if you didn't quite grasp it, feel free. But we're going to be doing those commands because they're so common in Inventor. We'll be using them all the time. So just by following through the course, you'll do that again and again. Okay, so in the next chapter, we're going to do not complicated part. We're going to go a bit more advanced in terms of part modeling. Okay. So I'll see you in the next chapter.